don't know about you, but all of these things, when you hear the actual music, they seem so inconsequential. But yet, they are not, these works are not built in a vacuum. As Beethoven, Mozart, Haydn, Mahler all are writing their music, this is what they have in their mind. These are the building blocks of what they have to follow. This symphony has even more meaning than you would ever imagine. The symphony is actually in C minor. But as you heard, the piece ends in C major. And that's not an accident. This is around the time that Beethoven finds out that he's going to... This is around the same time that he finds out that, you know what, as the most respected composer of my time, I have to have the embarrassment of going to people with a horn and say, please yell into this because I cannot hear you. And yet, he never lost his hope. He never lost his spirit. And in this Fifth Symphony, which begins in C minor, in a very dark, almost defeated, the piece ends in a major key. Goes from C minor to C major. And it's like the phoenix rising. That's not an accident. We know for a fact that Beethoven never lost hope that maybe that hearing thing might just be temporary. Of course we know it wasn't. So when you hear music like this, it's more than just structure. This is a man basically bearing his soul for you. All his complications. And I think that's in the end what music represents. It's not only the fact that we get to love the music and get to hear it, but also we get to somehow relate to many of these composers. And even if we don't know the stories, we hear and you hear tension. You do hear that underneath. That's not the work of a relaxed man. That can't be. So every time you hear something new, try to listen underneath. This is what I do when I'm at home. My kids think I'm crazy. I listen to music and I walk around and I try to be moved like that way and how every single piece comes together. So for you, when you listen to music, in the end, all of this is fantastic to know, but it's really what it means to you when you're actually hearing it. What moves you without knowing anything about it. That in the end, I think, is the magic of what music can do to you. And the fact that these pieces have been around, I believe, for the last 200, 300 years, it's not an accident. These composers have been dead. Many of them, most of them died penniless. So they have no marketing department. They have no PR person doing the bidding for them. All we have is their music. And that's why we know of them. So there's something more special than just hearing the music. These are composers that whatever they wrote 200 years ago is still relevant in the 21st century. So I hope that today you at least appreciate Beethoven, at least who we explored today, a little bit more. Because you did know he was a genius. I'm hoping that I'm proving to you that he was. But this man really knew what he was doing, and to be able to do that, there's nobody else. Mozart maybe, Haydn maybe, Mahler maybe. You know, every composer has their own specialty. And here we're very blessed and fortunate to have a great community that embraces music and has not only a world-class orchestra, but a world-class concert hall where, I'm sorry to say, but you get to hear it even better than you ever hear in any recording that you have. The actual live performance and watch the player and the conductor, mind you, get into it. So, with that said, my friend, I don't know if well, I think my time is up. Does anybody have a quick question or anything? Yes, sir. Yes. The Fifth Symphony he did here. It was past the seventh that he really lost it. By then, we know that past the seventh he really never heard it. You know, so we know that. But here he was pretty much advanced. But he still hoped. So, yes, ma'am. Which recording? I believe it's Berlin Philharmonic. I believe it's the Berlin Philharmonic with a bottle. It's a live recording, actually, which is pretty nice. So, yes, sir. Yes, absolutely. The question is, I mean, how much, I guess, the conductor has to say into how the performance goes. You have the entire thing. And you can basically, one of the biggest changes you can do is how fast or how slow you make a piece. But in the end, also, your control is almost like being a traffic cop, bringing out the inner voices. You know, when you hear a piece and then you hear it's like so transparent that even in this massive sound, you can still hear the inner voices. And that's what I was mentioning before about having the great concert hall like Stemmerhorn, where it is such an acoustical marvel that every inner voice you can hear Sometimes in many holes you hear too much of the basses, sometimes you hear too much of the brass, but here you're able to really try to get the piece apart and make it seem like it is on a very transparent canvas, and you can see every single voice being thrown at you, and how the composer basically feels the music. But yeah, my biggest job and my biggest fear sometimes is when I go conduct a major orchestra with a piece like that they think they know, and you have to come in basically and try to teach it to them from scratch. And I think that's when you gain the most respect from players, is when you're able to bring a piece that is so well known and basically hear it with fresh ears, when you bring new ideas. And I can promise you, most orchestras don't want to play the same piece over and over the same way. They always want to be challenged, and the same thing for audiences. You know, I promise you, you go home tonight or today, you go and hear your own basic recording of the fifth, it's going to be very different from this. I can tell you from night to night, my performances are very different. You know, they are. I mean, on a Thursday I'm a certain way, and the next day maybe I did homework all day with my kids. That's going to affect me. It will. You know, so I mean, you cannot do these things in a vacuum. You are affected by what you do. So, yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes. If the question is whether I hear a symphony for the first time, yes. When I open a score, part of your training is you're supposed to look at the music score and be able to hear it in your head. And I guess that's pretty much what Beethoven did when he wrote the 9th Symphony and the 7th Symphony. He did hear it in his mind. I do know what a flute and an oboe sounds like. I mean, if you close your eyes, I mean, you know what a train whistle sounds like. I mean, you can do this yourself. Obviously, these guys took it to the next level. But yes, a big part of our training, besides knowing all these things, is being able to open a score and being able to hear it, you know, and then from then on you start making decisions. I can promise you, though, that when I conduct a piece of the Beethoven Fifth, I don't listen to it. I kind of put all my recordings away because I don't want to be influenced. I want to be influenced only by what's in the page, and try to see what Beethoven, in the end, what his intentions were as a composer, you know. And then based on that, after that, once I know what I really want to do, I can go and listen up to 1 to maybe 20 recordings, because I do believe you can learn a lot from other great conductors. I do believe that. So, yes. The 4-note theme, you know, he did not, but other people did. The 4-note theme was actually stolen by quite a few other people. I even know there was a disco version of it, too. So it wasn't even just in his time. I know that even rock and roll people grabbed it. I mean, it was a great idea. And going back to how much of a genius this is, imagine if somebody came to you and said, hey, I want you to write a piece based on this, ta-ta-ta-ta. I mean, it's not like what kind of a melody is that? You know, that's why I use the symphony as an example, because it is truly a work of genius. To be able to make something like that so unforgettable. What makes a melody, what makes a motif unforgettable? Why do we all know? Why does that piece stay with us? Why? I mean, that's a question that I don't know how to answer. What makes a melody unforgettable? I don't know. Pieces that somehow stick in our heads and they don't let go. I know how that goes. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. We all know that tune. Why? Why that piece and maybe not the theme from Schubert's 6th Symphony? Why? Can any of you sing the theme from the Schubert 6th Symphony? You know? It's C major. That's all I can tell you. You know? But if I told you, sing along to this, bum, 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 you know how it goes. So what makes it memorable? Who knows? That's what music is. That's why music is so incredible. And music is there to be enjoyed. When you go to a concert, when you hear music, it is there for your enjoyment. When I'm here and I listen to this for the umpteenth time, trust me, it is as if it was the first time for me. I love this more than, and I don't know why. I don't know why I hear this again, and I'm like, and I'm going to go home probably, I put the CD in my car, and I'm still going to be humming along. I don't know why. That's what music is so powerful. I'll give a couple more questions. Yes? Yes, sir. They had to, the question is, how did they write the music? How did they compose it? Basically, they had to sit down with the entire score. There was no Kinkos, no printer. Literally, note for note, voice for voice, and deciding, okay, I'm going to give this to the flute, I'm going to give now this to the trumpet, now I'm going to add this to the bass, and now I'm going to add this to the, and as you're doing this, and remember, have you seen those horrible feather pens? Can you imagine all of this smudging that took place? And yet that music survived, and music was transferred from Vienna to London to Paris, and we have it here in Nashville in the 21st century. Somehow that music was not lost. There were wars around this time. Remember that in the early 1800s, Vienna was under siege from the French. Don't forget the fact that we have this music around with us, it's a miracle. This could have easily been lost, very easily, and the music survived. During war, burned things, even places were burned. We don't have the manuscripts in many cases, but we have this. And even to this day, I can promise you, we open scores and they say, what did he mean? Do you mean C sharp or C natural? We're still debating that, because both of them sound right. They're like on the edge, And yeah, to answer your question, these guys, yeah, handwritten many times. Beethoven, we know of cases where when he premiered his second or third piano concerto, he had written the orchestral part, but he hadn't written the actual piano part that he was playing. And he had his assistant, his student, turning pages for him. But the student, when they were out to concert, he realized that most of the pages were blank. Beethoven knew the piece, he had it in his head, but he hadn't written it down. So he kept looking at the poor student sitting next to him going, turn the page. He's like, when? Have you seen it? When he's like, right now, and you get up and you turn the page. And the guy from Beethoven, who was not the most patient of people, starts screaming. And the poor looking, it's a blank page. I mean, there's a very famous anecdote. It was a blank page because he didn't have time to finish to writing it. But he knew how it went. It happened. You couldn't tell that to the violin. The violinist needed the music. And again, imagine how it was like to write these things in these lines that were probably not even straight to begin with. And somehow, again, my friend, somehow this all survived. It's humbling. It's a miracle, literally. Why does the Stradivarius violin from the 15 and 1600s survive? Again, wars were fought. That's why we only have about 100 of them left. These things are real pieces of mean. They had to travel. They didn't have the hard cases like we have now. These things had to travel on coaches for months. And somehow we have still about 100 of these instruments laying around. It is miraculous, my friend. Every time I get to do this, I realize that I'm basically almost, it is like a medium for many of these people. But what influenced them musically and personally back then, it is relevant back then, it is as relevant as today. And that's what I'm trying, one of the messages I try to bring musically. When you hear this music, it's not in a vacuum. This music has meaning today, even more so now than ever. And those guys were new back then.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Craig Wright, and this is Listening to Music, the most basic course that the Department of Music has to offer. Its aim is to teach you how to listen to music. Wait a minute, you say. That's preposterous. I listen to music all the time. I got, my iPod. I'm downloading MP3 files, continuing swapping files. I've got my car what do they call those things in your automobile? Was it a DAT tape that you can put your iPod and plug it into the stereo system? I bet I listen to music in the dorm room, off my computer, in the bookstore, wherever. I bet I listen to a lot more music than you do, you old goat. And you're right, you probably do. But what kind of music are you listening to? Well, probably pop music, and that's fine. That's okay. Fair enough, pop music. But are you getting the most out of this particular experience? Are you getting the most out of your listening experience? I contend that perhaps you are not. That you are not maximizing the time.
Зайдешь. Видишь, мне бы сейчас может быть, вместо того, чтобы болтать, мне сейчас надо, ну, например, французский выучить, или, может быть, китайский, короче, китайский, чем не китайский, все не понимаю. Я что, ненормальный, что ли, тебе китайский язык учить? Да, ты уже всех говорил, блин. Я про себя говорю. Китайский, ну, вам может так правильно. Французский, латынь. Ну нет, нормально. Он себе так говорит, что... То есть, возможно, может это действительно, когда тебя уже принимают в консерваторию во Францию, на работу, да, как бы если у тебя, ну да, если ты здесь даже не можешь пианистом быть. Он не такой пьяный, он тебя говорил просто, ну вообще просто, ну нормально, так нет, ну вот это ему было на самом деле, ему это, нет, не страшно же это, что все хорошо. Да, вот это у меня туда. Ну вы тут же сами думаете. Да, понимаю, это сейчас тоже, да. Ну, смотри, а как лучше свою жизнь бросить? Ну, это я не могу гарантировать, да, понимаю. Ну, вот это и есть он самый, да. Ходить. Так это и есть он самый, да. Ну, это и он сам, да. Ну, теперь это. Да что за бред, блин, да. Это вообще понятно. Зачем вы так говорите? Уже, ты же меня знаешь. Он же артист, что ли? I'm waiting. Кстати, минус 20 все равно холодно. Ну, ладно. Это, ну, наверное. Наверное. Темнота. Ну ты чё, блин? Ну это не тебе. Ну это был он самый, да. Ну да. Вот наоборот. Если работу ищешь, что ли, я не понимаю. Ну это... Ну это... Да. 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 Ну да. Зазнался. Больной был просто сегодня. Нормально, слышно.